Welcome to the Cycle Spotlight. Thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, I've been speaking with industry leaders and experts on trending topics in software development and DevOps through the lens of our platform, Cycle.io. And I'm really excited to be chatting with Thomas Vanderpool today. We are chatting through deployment, automation, and other software engineering topics. Thomas, it's really good to have you on, and I'm excited for our chat today. Before we dive in, can you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing and your background?
Yeah, sure. So I've basically been a programmer more or less my entire life. I don't think I've ever really known how to be anything else. And have been working specifically with the current stack I'm working with, which is Ruby on Rails, for a long time. For those that are across it, it's since version 2, which too long ago. And I'm currently working for Submarine, a company building flexible customer experience platforms for enterprise Shopify retailers. So that is essentially high-end customizations for experiences like crowdfunding, pre-sales, subscriptions, that sort of stuff, all through Shopify.
Gotcha. And in our previous conversations, you talked a lot about deployment and how your processes work today. So I'm curious to dive into that a little bit and get your take. So, high level, what's your philosophy around deployment? How are you automating CD today? What does that look like with your processes?
Right. So from sort of first principles, I think the most important aspect of deployments is that they are predictable and repeatable, which therefore makes them something you should automate. I think it's important to start from that rather than from the automation side, even if you end up in the same spot. Specifically because deployments are the kinds of things that you end up doing, no matter how good your development process is, at some point something is going to break and you're going to need to fix it very quickly. And it's in those moments where you really don't have the time or bandwidth to go through an elaborate 20, 30 step checklist. Or you're at an all-time high risk of getting something wrong in that process. That's when automation really helps you. So building it, when things are not on fire is a good way to make sure that when things are, you get to do reliable deploys that can still be rolled back, quality assured. You can still perform all the things you need to when you're under the gun. So that's where my whole my set of preferences and priorities around deployment stem from.
Gotcha. And what's your recommended philosophy or process for iteration when something does go wrong?
So I think keeping it loosely on the deployments topic, it is really sticking to sticking as much as possible to the tried and tested paths. So obviously things break in different ways, and production issues are the reason to bend any rules necessary to sort things out for customers. But within that, again, if you have repeatable, automated, fast deploys, I think performance is actually a feature here specifically because of this. Like if you have an automated deploy but the process takes 45 minutes, you're much less likely to go through that process when things are bad and you're going to try and do it manually, and that will lead to things like one of your clusters not getting the update or any number of issues that you can avoid with computers doing the thing they're good at, which is the same thing over and over again. So that would be my focus, is as much as possible, even when things are in a high stress situation, to stick with the paths that you've created, and also therefore coming from the other side, create those paths with those situations in mind. Make sure that your processes work when you're under the gun and when minutes count and all of that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes total sense. And then our path actually crosses through our platform Cycle.io. But just curious, what tools, what processes are a part of your day-to-day deployment or just software delivery in general?
So like many software development places, we host our code on GitHub. So our deploys are all kicked off from GitHub Actions, which I'm personally a very big fan of. I've heard the phrase GitOps thrown around. I'm not sure I'm super across it, but I intuit that to mean something like this. I think that it's a good sanity check. If you are worried to automatically kick off a deploy when you merge something, that's more of a input, like more of a push to go and check your processes prior to that merge rather than putting additional manual steps in. So in a nutshell, our system, our processes, we use GitHub pull requests like I would imagine most people listening to this would. On a merge, we run our test suites and, code quality stuff. And once that all passes, we kick off a pipeline deploy on Cycle. So that's, and from there on, Cycle takes it.
Great. Well, hey, I really appreciate you jumping on and sharing a little bit more. I think it's really interesting to see how different people are doing deployment in the industry. So until next time.
Cheers.